Thank you. It's great to be back in Polk County. Still growing county, I'll tell you that. It's unbelievable. I want to thank everyone for being here. Thanks for the Sheriff's Department for hosting us. Thanks, of course, we're joined by the Sheriff here, Grady Judd. We're also joined by our Attorney General, Ashley Moody. We have two of our state attorneys from the central part of the state, Andrew Bain from the 9th Judicial Circuit and Susie Lopez from the 13th Judicial Circuit. That's Orlando and Kissimmee, and then Tampa for Susie. And then we've got Sheriff Wayne Ivey from Brevard County, Sheriff Chris Nocco from Pasco, Hardee County Sheriff Vent Crawford, and then Paul Blackman from Highlands County, the sheriff there. I want to thank all the sheriffs that are with us here today and throughout the state for the great work they have done. The reason why Florida is a law and order state is because they are there every day working hard with their deputies. We also have FDLE Commissioner Mark Glass, Florida Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles Executive Director Dave Kerner, Senator Colleen Burton from right here in Polk County, and then representing Sheriff Chad Chronister from Hillsborough is Joseph Maurer. He's the Chief Deputy, and I want to thank what they have done. So there's a lot of things that we have constantly beat the drum about, and we're going to talk about the law and order and some of the success that we've been having recently. But first, let me just say, I want to offer my congratulations to Lake Mary Little League for winning the Little League World Series. We've had very rich baseball, Little League, high school ranks all the way through in Florida for a long time. They are the first Florida team to ever win the entire Little League World Series championship. And so we offer our congratulations to that. They made everybody here in Florida proud. We were not as lucky in Dublin, Ireland when Florida State played Georgia Tech this weekend. My wife and I were there, and our kids were not happy with that outcome. But you know, you live and you learn. And so, but congratulations to Lake Mary. We're really proud of what you've done. We're also proud that the state of Florida has achieved a 50-year low in the crime rate. And that's not happening everywhere in this country. And in fact, this is something that was the opposite was happening for many years throughout the country. So we are 50-year low in the crime rate. We're the #1 state for net in-migration. Of course, here in Polk County, you see that. And I always remind people, I'm not asking anybody to move to Florida. I mean, we have a lot of people, and it's not that it's good or bad. It's just, you know, it's a free country. And people leave. And one of the reasons I think they've left some of these other areas is because they haven't supported law enforcement. They have not held criminals accountable. And consequently, they put the people of their communities at risk. And that's unacceptable here in the state of Florida. So we have the immigration. We're #1 in new business formations. They just released the credit rating a couple months ago, highest credit rating, you know, you can have, better than the federal government that we've had for most of our term. We have the lowest per capita state debt anywhere in America, and we also have the second lowest state per capita tax burden anywhere in America. So there's a lot of good things. #1 in education 2 years in a row by U.S. News and World Report, all 50 states, and #1 in higher education, public higher education for the last 6 years, which is something that's really, of course, I say yes, Polk, yes. So there's a lot of good things. We did the school choice program. We've done this and that. You are not going to have strong economy, you're not going to have strong education if you do not have public safety. When you don't have public safety, everything else starts to fall apart. We've seen that happen in other parts of this country where people have been elected and have turned their back on law enforcement. We've even had people get elected to prosecutor's office who decide their job is to put criminals back on the street instead of getting them off the street. So those results have been poor consistently across the country when that's been done. Contrast that to what we've done in Florida. When we saw the movement to defund the police a couple years ago in response to the BLM riots, not only did we not do that, we passed legislation prohibiting local governments from defunding the police. We want to guarantee people are going to have the resources they need in their local communities to keep the community safe. We also increased penalties for people that riot and loot and engage in mob violence. Most of these other places around the country at that time, they were giving these people a slap on the wrist. Well, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to do it again. We have also made sure that the people that wear the uniform know that they have the support of the state of Florida. For 3 years in a row, we did $1,000 bonuses to every single sworn law enforcement officer and firefighter and first responder in the entire state of Florida. And that's a lot of people. I mean, this isn't just bonuses for a few hundred people. So we were proud to be able to do that. We also established a law enforcement recruitment bonus program, $5,000 for new recruits. And so you have people that want to come from Minnesota, let's say, because they're not supported. They can come to Polk County and Grady can give them a $5,000 signing bonus for signing up to be here at the Polk County Sheriff's Office. And we've seen that happen all throughout the state. And it's not just for people coming from other states. You have young people that decide to go into law enforcement. If they make that plunge, then they can get the $5,000 signing bonus as well. So we're proud that the legislature has continued to re-up that. It's really, really meaningful. We've also increased penalties for drug dealers by increasing the mandatory minimum sentence for trafficking deadly fentanyl. We've also recognized that this problem has been exacerbated by the open border that we've seen over these last 3.5 years. Every state has now become a border state. We have sent Florida resources to help Texas stem the flow because it does impact our communities. The drugs don't just stay on the southern border. They come all across the fruited plain. And perhaps most significantly, we have made clear that people that are charged with enforcing the law in the prosecutor's office must abide by the law. They do not have the right to pick and choose which laws they are going to enforce, and they do not have the right to grant criminals a get-out-of-jail-free card. If you look at the problems around this country, there's a lot of bad policies that have gone into it. But every time these prosecutors have gotten in and decided they're not going to prosecute, you've seen people get hurt. You've seen criminals rule the roost, and you've seen society decay. So we're proud to have our priorities straight here in the state of Florida. You see that in the expectation of safe communities all up and down the state. Now, some of the things that we've done more recently, we're starting to see that those bear fruit as well. So one of the biggest problems that we deal with as a state and in every community is the fentanyl epidemic. And there's a lot of different ways you deal with it. We've worked hard on education, particularly in the schools, to let students know, you take some drug off the street. If that has fentanyl laced into it, that could be all she wrote. This is very, very deadly. We've also enacted a program called the CORE Network, Coordinated Opioid Response Network, that tries to help people who are addicted to opioids and get them on a pathway where they can actually live and be productive members of society. And as a result, we've actually had a decrease in overdose, which very few states are having. But as important as that is, the education, trying to push down on the demand, helping with the treatment, you have to hold people accountable who are trafficking in this poison. And so last year in 2023, I approved $20 million in funding for Florida's State Assistance for Fentanyl Eradication Program administered through FDLE. We call it the SAFE program. The SAFE grant makes it possible for local agencies to conduct large-scale drug trafficking investigations, shutting down complex organizations across the state. It provides money for local law enforcement agencies to be used in these fentanyl trafficking investigations for training as well as for investigative supplies. And so how have law enforcement agencies across the state responded? They've made a big impact. January of this year, here in Polk County, the Sheriff's Office utilized SAFE to arrest 11 suspects trafficking in fentanyl and cocaine, and they seized 8 pounds of fentanyl. That's a lot of fentanyl that could kill an awful lot of people. March of 2024, Santa Rosa and Escambia Sheriff's Offices, working alongside their federal partners, seized fentanyl, handguns, prescription pills, and held those perpetrators accountable. FDLE in April of 2024 worked with both Seminole and Palm Beach counties to engineer the arrest of nearly 40 drug traffickers. That same month, Fort Myers region successfully seized massive amounts of fentanyl and cocaine and MDMA, as well as major weapons caches. So on and on it goes. We see where these funds are helping these investigations go to the next level, and they're bringing these people to justice. When you're talking about fentanyl, you are talking about people that are dealing in death. You're talking about people that are dealing these drugs knowing that people are going to end up dying as a result of taking them, and that is unacceptable. And we believe in the state of Florida that the people trafficking in fentanyl should be treated like the murderers that they are. And we are going to throw the book at them, and we're going to give law enforcement the resources so that they can hold them accountable. If you look at what we've been able to do just with safe funds, we have seized close to 70 kilograms of fentanyl, as well as over 60,000 pills of fentanyl. That is enough fentanyl to kill 33 million people. State of Florida has 23 million people. So that is an awful lot of hazardous substances that our law enforcement has been able to interdict. And I can tell you that if it weren't for those funds and some of the success, that you would have had more people die from fentanyl overdose. There's just no question about it. Now, because this grant has been successful, I have approved an additional $8.5 million in this year's budget to continue its operation for a second year. We're going to do all we can to protect the people of Florida, but particularly young people, our kids, our grandkids, from the scourge of the fentanyl epidemic. And you don't have to look very far and wide in our society today to find a parent who has lost a son or daughter because of fentanyl overdose. It is ravaging communities all across the country. Now, why is this happening to the extent it is? Well, there's a lot of factors, but this border issue has been a huge source of the drugs that are coming across there. And, you know, sometimes the media will say, well, some of the drugs are coming through the port of entry. They're not coming illegally. Like, first of all, when you have chaos at the border, you're not going to be able to do the port of entry as efficient as you would if you had what you want is a secure border where then you can focus all your resources on the points of entry. But that's not what we have now. We have chaos and we have lawlessness. So of all the states in the country, Florida has worked hard to fight back against illegal immigration and against the border crisis. We've done things to ensure a legal workforce, like doing e-verify requirements so that legal people can work, but that we're not having illegals come in and work. We've also required hospitals to collect and report healthcare costs for people that are here illegally. And what that's done is that's caused the amount of money that is spent. Because, you know, if someone comes to the emergency room, you have to treat them. A lot of this is Medicaid money. It's caused that amount of money spent to plummet by 50%. Because we're being serious about making sure that the services are there for people that actually have a right to be in this state and to be in our communities. And so we've really helped curb the drain on medical resources by being very strong about this. And then, of course, my first year as governor, we banned sanctuary cities in the state of Florida. Now, at that time, we were worried about a sanctuary city defying federal law under the Trump administration. Now, you have the federal government that's turned the whole country into a sanctuary country, and they don't enforce the law. So it's a little bit different, but we were right to ban sanctuary cities, and we will never allow Florida to become a sanctuary state. We have strengthened penalties for people that come here illegally and commit crimes. We've also made sure we don't issue ID cards, driver's licenses to people here illegally. We don't allow counties or municipalities to do it, and we don't allow private organizations to do it, because that's what they started doing. They'd have some group just issue these ID cards for people here illegally. We don't do that. We don't recognize any of that, and we don't recognize ID cards, driver's licenses for illegal aliens from places like California, which they print those like hotcakes. They give them benefits. They do all this stuff. That's not the way it works here in the state of Florida. So we're proud of taking those actions. I think it's been meaningful overall. There's a whole host of issues that take place when you talk about illegal immigration in addition to just the fentanyl. But I've met with angel moms who've lost sons or daughters to illegal alien crime. And the media will sometimes say, oh, well, they're not committing a lot of crimes. First of all, I don't think that that's true. But even if whatever number it is, every crime perpetrated against somebody here in Florida or in the United States by somebody here illegally is by definition a preventable crime. Because if you had just enforced the law and had secure of your own sovereignty, that crime would never have happened. So it is important, and we're leaning in on that. I also want to recognize the two state attorneys that we have here today. This stuff can go sideways very quickly. And in Hillsborough County, it's a major growing part of our state, the Tampa area. Susie Lopez, she had served as the assistant state attorney for 15 years. She is working tremendously with law enforcement in that county. They are keeping people safe, and they are holding criminals accountable. If you look at Orlando, we had a situation where people are reporting to me what was happening under Andrew Bain's predecessor. You had people that were just routinely let out back on the streets who were very, very dangerous. You had a fella in March of 2023, Dayton Viel. He was arrested for sexual battery on a minor, as well as lewd and lascivious molestation. That arrest was made while he was already on probation for another offense, and yet he was let out on bond and thereafter shot two Orlando police officers. November of 2022, 17-year-old Lorenzo Larry shot and killed his pregnant girlfriend. Larry had previously been arrested in May of 2022 on several charges, including carrying a concealed firearm, possession of a firearm on school property, and criminal possession of a firearm by a minor, but he was released after all of those arrests. And then in October 22, minor was arrested on first-degree murder charges with the firearm. That shooting was captured on video. 1 month later, State Attorney Bain's predecessor inexplicably filed a petition to reduce the charge to mere firearm possession, and that individual was placed on probation. So these decisions have really significant consequences. State Attorney Bain has reversed that disposition and is holding criminals accountable. And that is what we expect for people who are involved in law enforcement. Don't turn criminals back on the street. Don't let the inmates run the asylum. You need to care more about protecting the general public and innocent people than you do about coddling the criminals who are causing so much problem in the first place. So thank you for doing that. If you look around the country, Los Angeles, they have one of these progressive prosecutors. They are up in murder 56%. Since their current prosecutor took office. That is not an accident. That is a result of policies that are allowing the criminals to be put back on the street. Philadelphia, under their current progressive district attorney, murders and shootings climbed over 50% during this tenure. Again, this is not rocket science. When you put people back on the street who are dangerous, they are going to commit more crimes and reoffend. So we are standing with the prosecutors in this state who enforce the law. We're standing with our sheriffs and our police department who are doing the difficult work of bringing these really bad people to justice. I'm proud of the success that we've had with the SAFE program. I think it's interdicted a lot of fentanyl. I think it's saved a lot of lives. So for all the sheriffs that are here, Grady Judd and all his colleagues, thank you from me as governor on behalf of the people of Florida for the great work that you do. And so we're going to continue to do what's right for the state of Florida. We understand that that law and order is the foundation of any type of success we can have as a local community, as a state, and eventually as a country. So you can count on us to stand for law and order. You can count on us to stand for what's right for the people of the state of Florida. And we will hold the bad guys accountable and bring them to justice. With that, I'd like to turn over the reins to our Attorney General, Ashley Moody.
Thank you so much. And the governor rattled off some amazing statistics in terms of our crime rates here in Florida as compared to the rest of the nation. And behind us are a lot of sheriffs and police chiefs and those in the ranks. If you could just give them, as well as all of the law enforcement officers in Florida watching right now, a round of applause. They wake up every day not knowing how that shift will end. And for those of us that sign up to be representatives of the people and do these jobs, we don't do that every day. And that deserves the respect and admiration of all Florida. And so thank you for helping us do that. You know, you heard the governor talk about Florida and how different we are from other states and what we're seeing as a result of that. You know, we lead in net migration. Businesses are being created here at record rates. We're breaking tourism records. And you heard him say that's not by accident. It is not by accident. It is because of accomplishment. And that accomplishment is based on good policy decisions, but it doesn't stop there. Because you can have folks like us stand up here all day long and talk about good policy, which is what we see a lot around this nation, even in the States sometimes. It's about policies and the hard work of implementing those policies, because policies without implementation are nothing. And the same holds true for enforcement of our laws. We can have the best laws on the books. In fact, since this governor got in office and our great legislative leaders with the help of our law enforcement officials, we've strengthened our retail theft laws. We've tightened up our bond and bail laws to make sure repeat and violent offenders aren't on the streets. We've given more resources to law enforcement. We've done law after law to make sure we are proactive on some of the national trends as it relates to crime. We don't sit back and wait for it to infiltrate Florida. We're proactive in our laws and setting up a barrier and make sure it can't come into our state. But we can enact laws, but if they're not enforced by the men and women standing here and the prosecutors that take the arrest, take the baton from law enforcement and carry it through to conviction and putting criminals behind bars, if any part of that process breaks down, that is where you see a weakening of your civil society. That is where you see chaos in the streets. That is where you see protests allowed to go on and on and on to where students take over buildings and things start burning. And what happens when they're arrested in some parts of the country? They go into jail, they get revolved right back out, and their supporters are waiting for them to give them a round of applause. That's what happens when you have laws on the books, but you don't have law enforcement that implements them, and you don't have prosecutors that carry it through to conviction. That is not the case here in Florida. People are very tired of scam politics. You know, I do a lot with fraudulent and deceptive trade practices as the Attorney General. People are tired of politicians and government officials standing at a podium and talking about how they protect their citizenry, they protect their states, they protect their cities, and then they do nothing to follow up that professing of supporting certain policies with implementing them to protect their people. You can look no other than Gavin Newsom, who was bewildered one time when people were fleeing with merchandise out of the store, and he said, I don't understand. We have the toughest retail theft laws in the nation. Laws are nothing if they are not enforced. I am so proud of two people standing up here today, Susie Lopez, who is the current state attorney in Hillsborough County, the 13th Judicial Circuit, and Andrew Bain, who's the current state attorney in the 9th Judicial Circuit. Both were judges. Both had a job where, let's say, they were protected by the bench, so to speak. And they were willing to give that up, to step up and say, we will not live in an area, in a jurisdiction where people profess to want to enforce the law and be the top cop and be the prosecutor, and when it comes to laws they don't agree with, they just refuse to do that. They refuse to do the job. That is not a government by the people. And so I am so proud of them for leaving the comfort of the bench. I mean, the judges that are watching would disagree. They would say it's the hardest job in the world. And I was a judge for over a decade, so I can say this. They left that job that they probably worked their entire careers to secure and achieve. It is the pinnacle when you work in the legal profession. And now they are doing the yeoman's work of making sure the people's laws are carried out and enforced. And I am so proud of them for taking that step. They don't know what their future holds, but they did this on behalf of our state, on behalf of our citizens. Because what these politicians, these scamming politicians, some of which say, I want to protect the public, and at the same time will support criminals or even bail out criminals and turn their backs on law-abiding citizens, that is not the separation of powers. That is not the people's laws being enforced. That is not how you operate a free society under a rule of law. And these people know it, and they had the courage to step up and said, put me in the game. I don't want to be a referee anymore. I want to be in the game and do the people's work and enforce their laws for them, because those folks that were in there before me weren't doing it. I am incredibly proud of their bravery. I'm incredibly proud of their efforts thus far. And let me just say about our governor and our legislative leaders. It is so refreshing to live in a state where you have someone that says, I want to enforce the law and keep our community safe. I'm going to be proactive about laws, and then watch him and our legislative leaders go to work. In fact, our sheriffs and our chambers did a study because they saw how different Florida was from other states in the nation. And they called it Building Stronger, Safer Cities, avoiding dangerous policy off-ramps to secure Florida's future success. And it outlines exactly the main reasons Florida has gotten it right. We don't defund our police. We don't decriminalize crimes like drug offenses or theft offenses. We don't allow rogue fake prosecutors to stay in office. We don't allow a revolving jailhouse door and put criminals and repeat offenders and dangerous offenders back on our streets. We hold people accountable, and as a state and as a community, like we started off doing, we support and prop up our law enforcement professionals as a whole. That's who we are, Florida. So I thank you for allowing us to be your representatives of the people and allowing us to make a stronger and safer Florida. Thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to Great Nicole.
Thank you, Governor and General. Do you know good things don't just happen? People make good things happen, and it starts with the leadership at the top. I can tell you that Governor DeSantis is absolutely the very best. We know he has our back. We know the Attorney General has our back. We know our state attorneys have our back, and what we are doing is we are serving the people. I go all over this county. I talk to people that are Democrats, Republicans, independents, not registered, criminals, non-criminals. They all tell us the same thing. They interact with me. They want to be safe and feel safe. And it doesn't make any difference who they are. This is not a political issue, it's a right issue. Well, I want to applaud Governor DeSantis. You see, because of the safe money, we can seize fentanyl. Now, they've made this fentanyl look like oxycodone. So there are those that think, well, I'm buying oxys illegally. Well, no, absolutely you're not. You're buying fentanyl. What's interesting about that, since January of 23, the Sheriff's Office only in Polk County with our colleagues, FDLE and our different Sheriff's Office and police departments working undercover operations, just in this county has seized enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in the state of Florida. Because it not only comes in that form, but look at this. That's all the fentanyl that it takes, 2 milligrams to kill you. Over 250,000 people have died in the United States since 2018 from overdoses of fentanyl. That is shocking. It's coming to us across the border from Sinaloa, Mexico, where they put it together. I want you to think about this a minute. If any other issue had have cost 250,000 lives in the last 6 years, this nation would be outraged. Well, why aren't we outraged about children dying? It's coming across the border. The governor spoke of the border. I want to show you, this is an unsecured border. Even those that are tone deaf can see that you can come into this country without obstruction. Heck, they come in without obstruction and then turn themselves in to be processed. We call it catch and release, and then walk out the back door with a notice to appear, which they never, ever show up. But let me show you a secure border. Do you see anybody crossing this border? No. The governor of the state of Florida is there. I'm there. Sheriff Ivey's there. The attorney general's there. Sheriff from Arizona's there. And there's a secure border. Do you know how this border got secure? This border got secure because we were standing there. Not one person crossed the border when we were there. That's how easy it can be to stop this inflow of fentanyl, this inflow of human traffickers that are indenturing young girls into being victims of human trafficking. Listen, folks, I want you to talk to a mother or a father whose child was smuggled into this country for prostitution. I want you to talk to a mother or father who lost their child from an overdose of fentanyl, who thought that, well, they were just taking an oxy, which, even though illegal, shouldn't kill you. But the reality of it is, in this state, you're safe and you feel safe because, guess what? It's important to understand that good things don't just happen. But here's how easy it is to get across the border. You don't need cross trainers. You just need border crossers. You see, you don't need technology. You don't need a major plan. All you need is these. And then you can walk across the border unobstructed. Or you can run across the border unobstructed. Or you can tiptoe across the border unobstructed. And you know what? This is all it takes to get into this country. And they're coming here by the millions to kill your children. We have a governor that says no. We have an attorney general that says no. They have stood up. They've been the leaders. They've provided us the tools. And this community has provided the strength and the support. You see, you're the government. We're only the representatives. Our promise to you is we'll continue to put bad guys in jail. Governor DeSantis, we're successful of backing these guys up when it comes to selling fentanyl because of you. God bless you. And by the way, we got to sign these. We're going to auction them off and give the money to the charity, okay? All right.
I mean, this isn't our first rodeo with Grady and press conferences. And so I always look to see what kind of props there. And I saw those shoes and I'm like, what is he going to do with those? And sure enough, he did it. So, but I appreciate that. And just one thing, the Attorney General mentioned all the retail theft in California. The governor claimed, hey, they have the strongest retail theft laws in the country. Just so you know, he also claimed that California has lower taxes than Florida. And if you believe that, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you. So now we're going to hear from our state attorney. So first, from Hillsborough County, Tampa area, we have Susie Lopez.
Thanks, Governor. I'm Hillsborough County State Attorney Susie Lopez, and I am proud to say that over the last 2 years, we have righted the ship in Hillsborough County. We've done that by repairing our relationships with law enforcement that were so badly broken under my predecessor. Our law enforcement officers used to arrest criminals, and they would turn back up on the same street, in the same spot, just a few hours later, committing the same crime. Why? Because my predecessor, Andrew Warren, didn't think those crimes were important enough to prosecute. If you don't believe me, ask the men and women in uniform in Hillsborough County. The truth is, all crime is important to fight, because whether you're committing retail theft or an act of gun violence, you will be held accountable under my watch in Hillsborough County. And the word has gotten out to criminals. They know there's no more Andrew Warren get out of jail free card. Our strategy of supporting law enforcement instead of criminals is working, and we have the numbers to back it up. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter in recent weeks about crime stats. The truth is, our community is a safer place than it was 2 years ago. The numbers I'm about to give you are brand new, literally hot off the presses, and they come straight from our law enforcement partners. This year alone, the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office has achieved a nearly 15% decrease in overall crime. Sexual battery is down 46%, robbery is down 27%. In Tampa, the largest city in Hillsborough County, we have seen a 10% reduction in overall crime. Violent crime with a firearm is down 11% in the city of Tampa. Now, these are some incredible numbers. And our community is safer because of the men and women who choose every day to put their lives on the line for you and me. We're also working together in the fight against fentanyl and the fentanyl crisis in Hillsborough County. One of my colleagues had a doctor's appointment this morning. She and the nurse were chatting, and the nurse asked where she worked, and she said she worked at the state attorney's office. And the nurse teared up and said that last year, her son bought what he thought was a Xanax. You know how this ends. It wasn't a Xanax, it was fentanyl, and her son died. Fentanyl has touched every office, school, church, business in this county and every other county in the state of Florida. But the good news is, fentanyl overdose deaths are down 8% this year. Prosecutors in Hillsborough County are going after drug dealers to hold them accountable for selling this poison, because that's exactly what it is. It is poison. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, this month, one of our prosecutors tried a case. It was a first-degree murder where the theory of prosecution was that the person who was charged, the defendant, sold fentanyl to someone who later died. First-degree murder, as you know, carries a mandatory life sentence. The jury came back and found that defendant guilty as charged, and that man will serve the rest of his life in the Florida State Prison for selling that poison to that young man. Drug dealers in Hillsborough County now know, and they know they're going to be held accountable. Everyone here today standing with me stands together in the state of Florida because we all want one thing. We want law and order, a peaceful community. We want a safe place to raise a family, open a business, or simply to enjoy retirement. We stand together, all of us from different jurisdictions, because the bad guys don't care about where the county line is. Drug dealers who sell in Hillsborough today, God love them, they may sell in Polk County tomorrow. Crime knows no boundaries. They'll deal with Grady+Judd in Hillsborough County. They'll deal with the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in Hillsborough. We will hold you accountable no matter where you are. But if we don't work with our law enforcement partners, we go back to a time when we were holding the hands of criminals instead of victims. Now, I realize what our law enforcement community has done by reducing violent crime. That is an incredible, incredible feat. And I will stand with them, and I do stand with them every day to make sure we continue the trend in that direction. But we all know that these numbers don't comfort a crime victim. It's why I've committed to personally meeting with every single family who's lost someone as a result of a crime in Hillsborough County. They used to get a form letter in the mail that said thoughts and prayers. That's not good enough for me, my administration, and certainly not my community. I've met with over 130 families who have lost someone as a result of a crime, and these are crimes going back as far as 2018. So for the last 6 years, I've had the honor of sitting with these families to make sure that they know who it is that's fighting for them and fighting to get justice for their loved one. The truth is, the best way that we can support crime victims, though, is to work hard to make sure there are no more crime victims. We do that by working with our law enforcement partners every single day to hold criminals accountable. We don't experiment with the law. We tell people what the law is, we expect them to follow it, and we will hold them accountable. Thank you to Governor DeSantis for your strong leadership, for giving prosecutors and our law enforcement officers the tools that we need to fight crime in our community and to make our community as safe as it can be. Thank you.
Okay, State Attorney for Orange and Osceola Counties, Andrew Bain.
Good afternoon, everyone. Carlos Pena, Samuel Frederick, Noah Polanco. These are 3 victims of the fentanyl crisis that plagues our community. Late last month, our grand jury in Orange County, because of the work between my office and the state attorney's office in the Ninth Circuit and the Orlando Police Department and Orange County Sheriff's Office, combined to work together to remove one of the most dangerous gangs off our streets. We weren't able to save these 3 lives, but I promise you, we will hold the people accountable for losing them. This drug is the most dangerous plague that we have seen since when I was a young child, when crack started taking over. It's even worse. It's being hidden not just in oxycodone pills, in candy. We've seen it in pencils. We've seen it all over our community. And we have decided to fight back. My office will continue to fight back. We will hold people accountable that decide to commit mayhem, murder, and endanger the lives of the people of the Ninth Circuit. They will face justice, and not my justice. They will face the justice that the people of this community has prescribed. Because the laws that we pass in our legislature are designed from the people. That's the beautiful thing about our country. There's no dictator or king assigning what is to be the law of the land. It is the people and their representatives that send them to Tallahassee that decide what the law of the land is. And my job, unlike what the governor has, is not to veto that law. My job is to enforce that law. My job is to hold the people accountable that harm the people in our community. And we have done that. We'll talk about stats. We talked a lot about numbers, but it doesn't, again, deal with the victims. The victims don't care about our numbers. When I go to meet with a family that has lost their child, when I go to meet with a family that their child has been abused or is human trafficked, when I meet with human trafficking victims, when I meet with the various people that are harmed by the people that want to do harm in our community, that are dangerous in our community, they do not care about our crime stats. They only care that there's somebody there that's going to fight for them. And it's going to fight for them every step of the way. And I'm so proud of the law enforcement agencies that are in our circuit. From the sheriff's offices, to the police departments, to our state partners with FDLE, and even our federal partners that have stepped up from the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI to help us fight this epidemic. And I'm thankful for the leadership of our state, because that's what allows us to do this job that we love so much. I'm thankful for General Moody, because she pointed out a thing that it's hard for me to express to people. Both Susie and myself gave up our dream. And some people will say, well, it's because the governor told you to do it. I'm a 6'4", 350-pound black man. Do you believe that that the governor telling me to do something is what's gonna move me to do something. I did it because what I saw on a daily basis from where I sat on that bench was horrific, was a tragedy. The continuing victimization of the people of our community was something that I could no longer stomach. And I had to do something about it. I could no longer sit there behind my comforts of my black robe and behind that bench and say, well, it's not my problem. It is everybody's problem. And I built my career before this on protecting the people around me. And I will always be the person to step up first to say, send me, I will be there for you to protect you. And we will continue to do that on a daily basis of the people in my office. And that's what I commit to doing when I tell my people that work for me, the 400 people that work for the state attorney's office that I love, I go to war for every single day, that we will be there to fight for you. And that is what is the most beautiful thing about doing this job. And I want to thank everybody that's behind me for the courage that they have every single day to do the leadership and the job that they do.
And just for the record, that's 6'4", 300+ pound frame. May not make a huge difference as state attorney or not, but he was one back in the day a defensive lineman at the University of Miami. And so is he, you got a prediction for Saturday's game? Okay, all right. We have Miami playing at Florida this weekend in the Swamp, so it should be a good one. One final point just about, because we have these state attorneys, and you have Susie's obviously in Hillsborough County. That's the entire circuit there. Andrew Bain has Orange and Osceola. We have some state attorneys that have even more counties. Some, we have a bunch that only have one, Palm Beach, Brevard, whatnot. It's not just an issue for whatever that one county is, because if you have a prosecutor in, say, Hillsborough that's releasing criminals back on the street, you don't think that's going to impact what Grady's doing in Polk County? Of course it will. You have somebody in Orange County releasing on the street. You don't think that's going to end up affecting people like Wayne Ivey over in Brevard? Yes, it will. And especially Polk, you're sandwiched in between these two judicial circuits. It's really important that we have uniform enforcement of the law all up and down the state, but particularly up and down this I-4 corridor. So everyone that's been involved, thank you for your efforts. It has paid off. There's a lot more work to do, but we are not going to let Florida go down the road of some of these places like has happened in Baltimore and Philadelphia and Los Angeles. We are going to maintain our commitment to law and order. And with that, I'm happy to take a few questions. Yes, ma'am.
I actually have two questions on two different topics, if that's okay.
Sure.
The state parks issue, there's been a lot of bipartisan backlash. The proposal, I know one developer has dropped out. How did that come about, and what is the future for that?
So this was something that was leaked. It was not approved by me. I never saw that. It is, they're going back to the drawing board, talk to your local communities. Here's the thing. I'd rather not spend any money on this, right? I mean, if people don't want improvements, then don't do it. And so that'll be something that citizens can be able to do. They're not doing anything this year. They're going to go back and basically listen to folks. A lot of that stuff was just half-baked, and it was not ready for prime time when it was, and it was intentionally leaked out to a left-wing group to try to create a narrative. Since I've been governor, we've added over 250,000 acres to conservation land. We established a Florida wildlife corridor. So we've done a lot of stuff. And on the state parks, if there does need to be improvements, we're not going to take away any green space. We have an existing footprint, and you do. But I mean, if we do nothing, then that's fine with me. Now, the one issue of the folds of honor. So first of all, we're not getting into the golf course business in the state of Florida, but we had one charity, Folds of Honor, which uses golf to be able to raise money to support the families of fallen service members and injured service members with scholarships. And they also do that for first responders, those killed in the line of duty and those injured in the line of duty. And so they had a proposal. It wasn't approved yet. There was a lot of vetting that needed to be due to take this abandoned military base in Martin County convert it into something that can be really nice, that would make the general public be able to afford doing it, because this stuff can be expensive, and then take the proceeds and use that to fund the scholarships for the military families and for the first responder families. But that is what they're doing. It wasn't like they were going to make a lot of money. Now, they're not in the business of courting all the controversy. So people down there, a lot of them were upset about it. Some was misrepresented as if they were going to try to take away all this unspoiled land. No, there was almost 1,000 buildings on that base back in the day. There's still some of the remnants of it, but be that as it may, they've withdrawn that proposal. That was the only thing we were interested in, just because it had the connection to the military stuff. So that's done. Now, Folds of Honor, I think they've done a lot of good work. And so it's not going to work in a state park, and it may not work anywhere in Florida where you're getting new land and kind of doing it. But what I think they could potentially do is take some of the existing courses that have been run down or abandoned, raise a bunch of money, make it something nice, and then use that to help military and first responders. We saw an example of that in West Palm Beach. So they had an old municipal course that had basically closed because it just didn't have support. It wasn't financially viable, so the city closed it. So you had a group of guys in Palm Beach area. They raised $50 million. They sunk it in, created a whole new course. They have like a 9-hole lighted thing, a driving range. They have all these programs for youth. They have really low rates for local residents, because let's face it, people talk about Florida having a lot of golf courses. Most of those are private courses. You know, if you're a police officer or you're a teacher, you're not necessarily being able to go to a lot of those places. And so what they've done is those local residents, they don't have to break the bank, and the kids are now involved in it. And it's become like a community place, and they call it the park at West Palm. Now that required a lot of resources, and it wasn't government money. They raised it, but that is a really, really good model. And if you can replicate that, I think it would be really, really good. So maybe if that group found a facility that was run down and rehabbed it, you know, that may be something that would work out. But I'm definitely somebody that wants to be able to provide opportunities for kids that may not be able to afford all kinds of outdoor recreation, all kinds of sports, and just rank and file members of the general public. I mean, you ought to enjoy all these different facets of life without having to break the bank. And I think one of the things is, just as a parent with kids and families around the state, there are things that are just very expensive now. If you look at the parks and some of these other things. And so I think what they did in West Palm was really, really impressive. I don't think there's been anything like that anywhere in the country that has met that degree of success. But that was not government money. That was a bunch of people that raised a lot of money, and they made the economics work because they did it. And your second question is?
Your response to a petition calling for Manatee County Supervisor of Elections James Spector, one of your appointees, to be removed from office after he lost his seat and then fired top staffer.
So I don't know the details of that. I mean, obviously, if people lose election, then they'll have someone else come in on the heels of that. So it seems to me that the voters will take care of that one way or another.
Governor, given you call this idea half-baked and not ready for prime time, are you going to do some more oversight on the office to find out how these plans are happening and how they're getting to the point?
So it's my understanding, so there's some of these things like people have requested improvements for different things. Some of the campsites, all these things. Like, look, as governor, I'm not refereeing how big this campsite is or that. I mean, it's just not things that I've been getting involved in. But this was done intentionally, given to a very left-wing group to try to create a narrative that somehow, you know, the state park's going to become a big parking lot or something like that. That's obviously a phony narrative and was never true to begin with. But nothing has been approved, and they are going to go back and listen to folks. And as I said, as governor, I am totally fine to just do nothing and do no improvements if that's what the general public wants, and that's fine with me.
Governor, what was your April 10th meeting with Folds of Honor about?
So they talked about potentially doing something in the state of Florida where you had, they were going to honor the Tuskegee Airmen with a facility, and they were kind of in the stages of developing some ideas along the lines, and then helping the military families and helping the families of first responders. I think they've given a lot of money over the years. Of course, they have operations throughout the country where they've given millions and millions of dollars to fallen, the spouses and dependents of fallen service members, injured service members, and then they've recently expanded that into first responders. And so those are the types of things that we've worked awful hard on in the state of Florida. And if we can leverage some of these resources to do it, that could have big benefits for the state. Now, not going to happen at the Camp Murphy site in Jonathan Dickinson, but maybe they will be able to find a site, maybe an existing course where they can rehab, show it some love. They're gonna have to raise a lot of money. And even what they were proposing at Camp Murphy, the state was not gonna give any money. They were gonna have to raise tens of millions of dollars to do it. I don't know if that was ever even feasible, but the economics of this can be very tough. And so you need to be able to raise that resources if you wanna be able to offer something to the public that doesn't break the bank. West Palm did it. But West Palm also has access to all those people living across the bridge on Palm Beach who can write big checks. We don't necessarily have that in every part of this state or every part of this country.
Governor, two-parter as well, if you don't mind. First one, a report out of Tallahassee this morning, State Rep Randy Fine, blasting your recent trip to Ireland that you wrote out calling it an anti-Semitic country. What is your response to that?
So we went over there to cheer on Florida State against Georgia Tech and the Republic of Ireland. And all I will say to that is, I think about just every lobbyist in Tallahassee made that trip. So is Representative Fine going to stop taking the money from all the lobbyists like he's been doing? I'd like to see his answer to that. I was aware after the fact. I mean, look, our view as a state is we're the best place to visit. We're open to all, but we're not going to be segregating people by these different characteristics. That's not how we've done business in any of the things that we've done, and that's just not how we're operating. So we have people from all walks of life that come. They enjoy the state of Florida, and that's, I think, the way the policy has been. So I'm not sure how any of that stuff started or this. I am aware of it now, but I think nothing really changes in the fact that Florida is going to remain a great place to be. And we're proud to have, you've had over the years a lot of activist groups call for travel advisories against Florida just because they don't like that, they don't like certain policies that we're bucking the left on. And as they've done that, I think we've continued to set tourism records. So in fact, the second quarter, we had the largest second quarter that we've ever had in the history of the state of Florida. So we keep doing that, even as, it's not like the economy nationwide is all peaches and cream, and yet Florida continues to be a really big engine. So we're proud of that. We're going to continue to be a great place for people to come and visit.
Governor, in June, the cabinet approved the land swap of 300 acres of state forest land in Cabot's interest. What was that deal about?
I think it was that we were getting better conservation land for that. So they gave us conservation land and we gave them less desirable land. So that land will go into conservation as part of our efforts. All right, thanks everybody.